What's going on, you guys? My name's Ty Knots and welcome to Top 5 Unknowns, 5 Scariest Killer Confessions. Number 5. Frazier Glenn Miller was a member of a white supremacy group charged with taking the lives of 3 individuals at 2 separate Jewish facilities back in 2014. He was arrested, with court proceedings lasting a number of months. However, his case dramatically shifted in December of that same year, when Frazier blurted out a confession in the courtroom claiming responsibility for his crimes. He was ultimately given the death penalty and remains on death row to this day. Take a look at a short clip.
Mr. Frazier does understand the nature of the proceedings and is capable of assisting counsel in his defense. So we will move forward at this point then.
74-year-old Frazier Glenn Cross was quiet during this part of the hearing, but then the judge set a preliminary hearing date for March, and the outbursts began.
What about my speedy trial?
Sir?
Cross is accused in the April attacks at the Jewish Community Center and at Village Shalom Retirement Community. 3 people were shot to death: Dr. William Corcoran, his grandson Reed Underwood, and Terry Lamano, who was visiting her mother at the retirement center. Cross is an avowed white supremacist, and at one point he was the leader of the Ku Klux Klan in North Carolina. As he was wheeled out of court today, he confessed to the shootings and said his reason was hate.
I attacked the Jewish center of Jews commit genocide against white people. I have a right. I refuse to do what I did.
Number 4. A 35-year-old mother of 4 has been accused of taking the lives of 2 of her young children, then stuffing their bodies in a freezer in the midst of a custody trial, claiming she was an unfit mother. By July of 2015, she'd been accused of torturing and beating her 9-year-old son to death, as well as suffocating her 13-year-old daughter. Within a year, she admitted guilt for her crimes in court and was sentenced to life in prison. Take a look at her extremely emotional courtroom outburst that led to her conviction.
Everybody want to know? Yes, I did kill her!
In a lightning bolt of emotion, Michelle Blair admits to killing her 13-year-old daughter, Stoney Blair, because she believed the teen and her 9-year-old son, whom she's also accused of murdering, had been harming her youngest child. Blair is charged with their murders, but the trial that began today is about the state attempting to terminate Blair's parental rights to her 2 surviving children.
What happens when your kids come to visit you in 2005?
Sister gave him a bath, seen whips on her back.
Who's seen whips?
My sister.
Your sister. Did you see these whips?
She showed them to me.
Are these long red marks?
No, they was healed up by the time I seen them.
Healed up. But do they appear to be long, like lines?
No, it's like slashes.
Another one of Michelle Blair's outbursts came as an attorney for one of the fathers was addressing the court.
So I asked the court not to be so inflamed by the mother's actions as to place those on my client. The allegations against my client, Mr. Berry, are failure to protect and abandonment.
And never being there for his kids.
Mother,
She was
stop.
always on sex sites, though,
Mother,
right?
Mother, listen to me.
I had to beg you to come see me. For real?
Mother, listen to
No
me.
matter how much you lie or how your lawyers lie.
You done, Mother? Listen to me. This is a civil case. It's not a criminal case. We can and we will do it without you.
I never
We
tried
will
to say I
do it
didn't. I
without
did it,
you.
but that does not negate the fact that they were never there for their children. I had to struggle with them all the time. They were never there.
You get
Stephen,
your
you
chance.
know we had to beg you. Me, Stephen, all of us used to cry for you.
You're not going to be able to
I'm
stay,
good.
Mother.
Come here.
There are rules.
Number 3. I'm sure by now we're all highly familiar with Dennis Rader, the BTK killer, responsible for taking the lives of 10 individuals between 1974 and 1991. Though surprisingly few people have seen or heard his courtroom confession, leading to his guilty verdict. On June 27, 2005, Dennis Rader was heard on live TV acknowledging his crimes for the very first time, claiming responsibility for his actions. Take a look at a clip from the court proceedings.
Mr. Rader, I need to find out more information. On that particular day, the 15th day of January, 1974, can you tell me where you went to kill Mr. Joseph Otero?
I think it's 1834, Edgemore.
All right. Can you tell me approximately what time of day you went there?
Somewhere between 7 and 7:30.
This particular location, did you know these people?
No, that's no, that was part of my, I guess my what you call fantasy. These people were selected.
All right. So you
Okay.
you were engaged in some kind of fantasy during this period of time?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, when you use the term fantasy, is this something you were doing for your personal pleasure?
Sexual fantasy, sir.
I see. So you went to this residence, and what occurred then?
Well, I had did some thinking on what I was going to do to either Mrs. Otero or Josephine, and basically broke into the house, or didn't break into the house, but when they came out of the house, I came in and confronted the family, and then we went from there.
All right. Had you planned this beforehand?
To some degree, yes. After I got in the house, I lost control of it, but it was, you know, in the back of my mind, I had some ideas what I was going to do, but I basically panicked that first day, so.
All right. When you went into the house, what happened then?
Well, I confronted the family, pulled a pistol, confronted Mr. Otero, and asked him to, you know, that I was there to, basically, I was wanted to get the car. I was hungry, food, I was wanted, and asked him to lie down in the living room. And at that time, I realized that wouldn't be a really good idea, so I finally, the dog was a real problem, so I asked Mr. Otero if he could get the dog out, so he had one of the kids put it out. And then I took him back to the bedroom.
You took who back to the bedroom?
The family, to the bedroom, the 4 members.
All right, what happened then?
At that time, I tied him up.
While still holding him at gunpoint?
Well, in between tying and yes. Yeah.
All right, after you tied them up, what occurred?
Well, they started complaining about being tied up, and I re-loosened the bonds a couple of times. Tried to make Mr. Otero as comfortable as I could. Apparently had a cracked rib from a car accident, so I had him put a pillow down for his head. Had he put a, I think he Parker or a coat underneath him. They talked to me about giving the car and whatever money. I guess they didn't have very much money, and there I realized that I didn't have a mask on or anything. They already could ID me, and made a decision to go ahead and put them down, I guess, or strangle them.
Number 2. A man by the name of Israel Keys admitted to taking the lives of over 10 people, burying at least 3 of them in Washington, and submerging countless others in an unknown lake. In 2012, Israel conducted a series of interviews with the FBI, in which he revealed a small amount of information about his victims, including where to find a few of their bodies. However, before his case could be closed and him be properly convicted, he took his own life while in jail. Take a look at a short clip from a news piece that aired about Israel back in 2012.
When I was smart, I would let them come to me. Just remote area. Come go to a remote area that's not anywhere near where you live, but that other people go to as well.
The police interrogation is in Anchorage, Alaska, where Keys was being held for the murder of 18-year-old barista Samantha Koenig, seen here putting her hands up the very moment a masked Keys pulls a gun on her. He zip ties her hands and leads her away from the coffee stand, telling police he killed her, then left to take a cruise out of New Orleans before asking her family for ransom. Gruesome as it is, Keys wasn't done talking. In fact, the man who matter-of-factly confessed to raping and murdering Koenig left investigators stunned by telling them he's a serial killer.
There is no one who knows me, or who has ever known me, who knows anything about me, really. I'm two different people, basically.
How long have you been two different people?
Long time. 14 years.
Keys said enough to start a massive investigation, but he didn't tell them everything. Sunday, they found his body. He'd killed himself with a razor inside his jail cell. One final act of control.
Number 1. Gary Ridgway, also known as the Green River Killer, confessed in 2013 to taking the lives of over 80 women, a number that doubled investigators' estimates of just 40 women. During his sentencing, Gary was only charged for his involvement in 49 of his crimes, though after his conviction is when he openly admitted that there were many, many more victims. The clip you're about to see is from a woman who was employed by the FBI to assist in getting Gary's confession. Take a look.
My strategy was to get him talking and to have him do most of the talking. How are you this morning?
Pretty good. Slept real good. A little toss and turning, but pretty good.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. I would also sit very close to him so that I could maybe touch his elbow and say, Gary, tell me what it feels like.
The questioning goes on for weeks. Some sessions last for hours.
Turn him off and he will not talk. And your goal is to keep him talking.
And finally, something within Gary Ridgway cracks. Bit by bit, he starts talking.
I don't know if it started at an early age, but sex and hurting the woman.
And he loved being able to talk, finally, after all these years. And in doing so, he kind of walked us down the path of all of his murders. At one point, Gary referred to himself as something like the lean, mean killing machine. And he was very efficient, like a machine.
Explain that process to me.
Let's say she's always in the car driving down the road, so I whipped out my ID, and with my ID would be I'd put my finger over my driver's license to hide my name. But on the opposite side was pictures. And a picture of my son. They would know I was probably a normal person.
But you were really using your son as part of your ruse.
The girls would think Ridgway was a kind family man. They had no idea they were setting off with a serial killer.
And he would drive up to them, and sometimes he'd even have his son's toys in the front seat, and that would be a very effective ruse to convince these women that, hey, I can't be that serial killer. I've got my little boy's toys in the car. He was a very normal, kind of vanilla type looking person, and there was nothing that stood out about him. Not dangerous. He could have been anybody living next door. He was anybody living next door.
Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, be sure to click that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep updated with our videos.